Hello, everyone. As we continue our celebrity series, I'm delighted to have this opportunity to have a conversation with conductor and educator Matt Mehaffey. Dr. Mehaffey is currently professor of music at the University of Minnesota, where he conducts the university singers and men's chorus and teaches graduate and undergraduate courses in conducting and in music literature. He was recently chosen as recipient of an exemplary teaching award, which I'm not surprised about. He also serves as music director of two respected civic choruses, the Oratorio Society of Minnesota, and as the Robert Page music director of the Mendelssohn Choir of Pittsburgh. And of course, this is the chorus of choice of the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. I'm very proud to say that Dr. Mehaffey, Matt, to me, received his Bachelor of Music degree from Bucknell University and sang in my Bucknell choirs for the 4 years that he was doing his undergraduate studies there. He also helped me as a student assistant conductor. His graduate studies after Bucknell included Westminster Choir College and the University of Arizona. So Matt, I'm thrilled that you agreed to do this today. We go back a long time. And the first question I want to ask you, Matt, it's absolutely mind-boggling to me how before COVID, you juggled your schedule among the university and two major choruses, one in St. Paul and one in Pittsburgh, not to mention time with your wonderful wife, Libby, your 4 children, and your dog. Mm-hmm. How did you do it? Maybe describe what a week was.
Sure, well, I did it for 4 years, and when I started, I didn't have any of this gray hair, but now, so that's given me a little bit. But
it happens.
Well, I had been working, even before I took the job in Pittsburgh, I had been working quite a bit, supporting my family. I had the job at the university, and I had been with the Oratorio Society for about 9 years. And I had a church job that whole time as well. And so I basically replaced my church job, which was Wednesday nights and every Sunday, with flying to Pittsburgh on Wednesday morning and flying home on Thursday morning. And I got almost all of my Sundays back, which was nice.
Matt, the Susquehanna Valley Chorale knows you best as a kind of second son to me, and as the one who asked if I would be interested in joining a consortium to initiate a new work by Steve Hackman, who's a Pittsburgh conductor, to write a Dylan oratorio based on some of Bob Dylan's most iconic songs. And as you know, we did in fact join that consortium, and we were scheduled to sing the oratorio the weekend after the COVID shutdown. So the Susquehanna Valley Chorale was so disappointed. And in fact, some of your singers were going to come and join us. And luckily we've rescheduled it for the spring of 2022. So we'll be sending them an invitation to join us for that one as well. But I think the choir and our supporters and our listeners would be interested to know about your experience working with Steve Hackman and working with the Mendelssohn Choir for the premiere, which I was able to go to, and it was thrilling.
Sure. Well, I mean, this is a kind of apropos of the time here that, yesterday Bob Dylan sold his entire song catalog. I don't know if you saw that, Bill.
I did not see that.
Oh, so he sold his song catalog to Universal for $300 million. So, and that's just the rights to the songs, not the rights to the recordings. So, anybody who wants to cover a Dylan song now, that's who they would go through. Well, I mean, it's an interesting story, I think. When I became the Mendelssohn Choir director in 2016, and they had kind of completed their season under their previous director earlier in the spring, and then, had kind of nothing to do until I was going to start in the fall. And so the executive director and a man named Bob Moyer, who was on the search committee that hired me. He had been hired by the choir to kind of assist with their search for their new music director. He had recently retired from the Pittsburgh Symphony as their vice president of the symphony. And so he had been working with Steve Hackman. Steve is half a generation younger than I am. He's in his late 30s, I think, and is just an immensely talented musician. He is actually had a similar kind of educational experience to me. He grew up playing kind of jazz and pop piano like I did. He went to a university not knowing he was going to major in music. He joined the a cappella group at University of Illinois and then started writing a whole bunch of arrangements for that group, and found he had this real talent in composition. I did a similar thing when I went to Bucknell. I was in the a cappella group, the Bison Chips there, and got really heavily involved in writing arrangements. And so Steve then I went on to Westminster Choir College. Steve went on to Curtis to study conducting. And, there kind of came more into the classical world, and he's done these amazing mashups of classical music and pop music. And so the choir needed something to do in the spring of 2016. So Bob Moyer asked Steve, who was at that time conducting a kind of crossover series for the Pittsburgh Symphony, if he would write the choir some arrangements for a concert that they could do at the Three Rivers Arts Festival. And Steve did that, and the choir, it was a real departure for the choir in terms of going into this style. In that season, I think they had done like Bach's St. John Passion and the Duraflay Requiem, and these classic war horses. And that's what the choir was used to doing. And Steve brought this whole new kind of almost like a cappella group, highly rhythmic, crossover of classical and popular music. And the choir loved doing the pieces, and they had a great experience with Steve. And then I came on board and I got to meet Steve. And, we were looking for a way to do something else with Steve. And Bob Moyer and I became quick friends. And, he was, I think at that time, Steve's manager, and was helping Steve get conducting gigs with orchestras across the country. And we were just talking about, you thinking about the Mendelssohn Choir not as standing behind the Pittsburgh Symphony and, singing with them, but what could we do that would really break the mold of a choral concert? And at this time, Bob Dylan had just won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And, we were kind of musing together back and forth about that, about which Bob Dylan songs we liked and which performances of Dylan songs by other people that we liked. And pretty soon we came up with the idea that maybe we should do a Dylan piece for choir, which seemed really, almost like a throwaway idea. And Bob brought it to Steve and asked Steve if he'd be interested in writing something, and that we would then, form a consortium of choirs to, really be able to afford, pay Steve enough that he could spend enough time at creating a significant piece. And Bill, that's when I called you, and you came on, and other choirs across the country, I think 6 in total, were part of that original commission. And Steve, I thought Steve, with all of his pop knowledge, would have been known all of the Dylan songs, but Dylan was never his guy. He said because his dad liked Dylan, and he just didn't want to like Bob Dylan because his dad liked Bob Dylan. But Steve spent a couple months kind of plowing through Dylan's catalog, choosing pieces that inspired him, and chose, I think, 12 or 13 pieces. Maybe it's actually 15 pieces, I think, to do arrangements of, and he put them together. It's not like one of these Broadway musicals where they take, a composer's or a songwriter's songs and craft them into a story, like, they've done with, the Four Seasons and Billy Joel and those types of things. This is just more of like a cantata. So we call it an oratorio, which kind of implies that there's a story there, but it's more of just almost like a choral symphony that based on Bob Dylan songs. So, which has 15 movements. I remember Steve kind of sent the piece to me in, I guess that was late 2017. and I got it, and it was like this thick, and I thought, oh my goodness, I only, thought I had like 6 or 7 rehearsals to do this thing. And but the choir just did it. One of Bob Dylan's most beautiful songs that no one knows that he wrote, "To Make You Feel My Love." Everyone knows Adele's version of that. But Steve's version is just, with the
exquisite
choir, it's amazing. It's so beautiful. It brings tears to your eye. It's just so emotional. And then there are fun ones like, Tangled Up in Blue is a really fun one.
Right.
Easy listening ones like Knocking on Heaven's Door. Right. But the real showstopper for me is the it's Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, which comes right at the end.
Oh, yes.
And every night was just more and more powerful for the audience. And I on the last day, I don't know if I've told you this, Bill, but the very last day when we did that one, it gets to the big chord at the end. And each night there had been kind of that classical music moment of silence thing, where the conductor holds their hand there and the audience doesn't immediately clap. And you could have heard a pin. It was Sunday afternoon, full house. You could have heard a pin drop in this place. And the silence went on for over 2 minutes. It was just, oh my gosh, unbelievable. And then this man who was in the upper deck just started sobbing out loud. I mean, just like, it was, just took your breath away. But he was so moved. And I guess we found out later he had a son who had died in the war in Iraq. And, and everybody just sat there and listened to this man, grieve. And it was the music of Bob Dylan, the words, Steve's arrangement, the power with which the choir sang it. It was just all came together in this, incredibly beautiful moment, I thought. Totally. I think that's the moment of that whole weekend that I remember most vividly. I think many of the choir members would say the same, and I'm sure the audience members remember that as well.
I know that you love to travel with your family, and where's your favorite place to go with them? I think I know.
So well, we obviously we haven't traveled very much. I've traveled. We did a beach vacation this summer to the Atlantic Ocean, which they had never been to before. Cool. But they had been to the Mediterranean Sea a couple times, and never to the Atlantic Ocean. So, I think our favorite place that my wife and I love is Italy, and we've been so blessed.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
My wife Libby, she studied abroad and lived abroad before we met, and had this wonderful connection with a professor of hers, just like Bill, you're my professor, and I've just been so blessed to have you in my life as my mentor and my friend. And she was the same way, except Bill, her professor owned a villa in Tuscany. So,
well, we've got
you have a beautiful, well, I'll call your place in Central PA, I'll just call it a villa instead of the farm. Right?
Okay, that sounds good.
Traveling is one of those things that's just, really, that's another gift that you gave to me, Bill, as when I was at Bucknell. Every year the choirs would travel and we got to go some amazing place, and you could quickly see that the world is a great place to explore. And, you always kind of went off the beaten path a little bit too, which was a lot of fun. And I think gave me a lot of courage to do that. With students, I've taken students all over the world, and adult choirs as well. And so yeah, very blessed to have done all of that.
I'm so proud to say that you were my student. You're already becoming an icon in the choral world, and I appreciate so much what you are doing. You're doing a lot of cutting edge things like the Dylan, and you're raising the bar for a lot of choral conductors and your students and your singers. And that's so important. So I appreciate this time today, Matt.
Well, I will say, if I have a minute, that, there's just so much exciting, people are being so creative in choral music now during the pandemic. But I think a lot of conductors of all ages are kind of thinking of new ways that choral music can be relevant. you know, when I look at my students now, I have 5 graduate students, and the students who graduated from the program where I work over the last couple of years, the just array of kind of career possibilities that they have in music is so much more diverse than what was possible when I finished school 20 years ago. You know, I remember when I changed to be a music major, I think my parents called you, and I think, did they threaten you or something? You know,
They were very nervous.
You know, they wanted to make sure I could get a job, and everything was very kind of like, okay, we laid out a path. I was finishing Bucknell. I went to Westminster. I did these things, and I jumped through all the hoops, and you know, but there was a pretty realistic, you know, possibility that at the end of that there would be an academic job that's available. And 20 years ago, when I applied for those jobs, I mean, there were many, many more of them open than there are now. And my students now, I think, have so much more courage because they are looking at, you know, those that kind of lifestyle not necessarily being something that might be attainable because there's just fewer of them, and B, might not be what they want to do. And my students over the last 6-7 years I think only one of them is currently teaching in higher education, and they're all working professionally. They've started their own groups. They've taken big church jobs that have great social justice components to them, where they're doing music, you know, using music for the greater good. So it's really amazing what's going on in music right now. And, you know, I'm kind of excited to see where it goes. I think I'm most excited to just make music again, because
aren't we all? Matt, thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill. This was a real honor to be asked. I've never been called a celebrity before, so thank you very much.
Well, you are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Take care.